Howdy folks, lurking from Mobalytics and going over the patch notes, June 17th, 1.43. We greatly appreciate everyone's excitement since the launch of Season 4. Season 4 has been pretty good, but I personally and a lot of others, especially on Sorcerer, we're burnt. We're very tired. Our damage isn't good. The TLDR of this is we got a couple nice things, but in the current Immortal Flame Shield, we didn't really get much damage. They didn't really affect the Paragon that much. We basically got a couple pennies. This is nothing that's going to really push the dial. I could see a lot of our builds. When I talk about Sorcerer, I'm talking about like Blizzard, Frozen Orb, Ball Lightning. I'm not really talking about the Firebolt, Shatter stuff. That's such an outlier and it requires so much boss fishing that I really don't care about it. And I'm just talking about like Sorcerer, the actual class, Fireball, Ball Lightning, Blizzard, Chain Lightning, just like how the class actually is. So let's just go over it real quick. It's not going to be quick. All right, so Healing Potions got a buff. That's actually pretty nice. They've been kind of crap for a while. They really only touched for global legendary aspect of the Protector. This doesn't really do anything. Nobody really runs this. I do like this Andariel Visage change, but the problem with it, so Andariel Visage has play on Blizzard, but in the current climate, no, because you want Shaco ranks for Flame Shield ranks. But in general, Andariel's Visage does have play on Blizzard, or at least it used to, because you'd get the Talrasha stack out of it. But now I think the issue with Blizzard is whether you're running a staff or whether you're running a wand focus is Talrasha's limited to 4 stacks, and Blizzard it's got really good offensive tempers, the ice spike damage tempers, but it has literally no weapon tempers that it can use because you don't want Blizzard size. It ruins your single target DPS because instead of the shotgun spread, the ice spike spread being like this, it's now like this, and it's going to hit less of the pinpoint. And there's no like Blizzard cast twice. There's no anything like that. So you just run a lucky hit chance for cold, or you run a lucky hit chance for poison or shadow res to get that 4th Talrasha stack. So Indariel's Visage doesn't really have play on Sorc, but it's not the worst thing. Doombringer, don't care. Starless Skies got a buff. I think this is great. A lot of people do still run Starless. I still think that Starless is outclassed by an attack speed ring with something like Shredding Blades on it for 30% damage. I think the temper, you can get an unstable current cooldown reduction roll on it. A lot of builds are running that for the attack speed. And then just like the GA attack speed, GA int, and then you can either take like vulnerable or crit chance. I still think it's a bit outclassed, but now I think this was a really good buff, and I think it's good. Tyrell's Might got buffed by 100%, which also coincided with a Holy Bolt nerf. But I do have, let's see, check it out. I do have a Tyrell's Might and Hydra build that was hitting for about 1,000,000 a bolt with all the bolts collapsing in on the Hydra. So that did get buffed by 100%. So that's pretty cool. One thing they did do that's cool, stat requirements for non-main stats reduced from 90 to 60 per Paragon board. So that's like your stuff like on Frigid Fate, like the vulnerable requiring willpower. It's like the willpower and Dex Rex basically. So we'll see what. So it used to basically be any willpower or Dex Rec past the 4th board was iffy. Basically, the 5th board you wouldn't hit a willpower rec, but because a lot of our damage glyphs are Dex, you'd probably hit that with Shaco. You'd hit that 540 Dex on the 5th board, but anything on the 6th board, you could only 6 boards onwards you could only hit intelligence. But now we might be able to hit if it's 90 to 60, then it's only going to increase slower. So we might be able to. My guess is we can hit Dex Rex on the 6th or 7th board now, and willpower Rex one board before, but we'll see. I don't exactly know how it's going to scale. One thing I do want to talk about is the Barb buffs. Flay got a huge buff. I don't even know what this all means, but Flay got buffed. And meanwhile, Flay is already
playing a
hitting
very
for 75 trillion with 2 to 3 billion damage ticks. Okay. what is I don't know what the balance team is doing. I don't know. Druid got some buffs. I don't Necro got whatever. Necro got gutted though because of the Holy Bolt. Rogue got some things. I'm not really compare. I'm here to talk about Sorcerer. So Sorcerer skills. Ice Armor. This was a good change. Barrier amount increased from 30% of base life to 25% of max life. That's really nice. But the underlying problem still lies that. So when you let's look at it. Let's look at Ice Armor real quick. Skill tree. Let's try and zoom in here. So let's look at Ice Armor. So Barrier of Ice forms behind for 6 seconds. It's now going to be 25% of your max life, which is really good. But here's the big thing. While Ice Armor is active, 5% of your damage dealt is added to its barrier. This does scale down as enemy level goes up, but on a normal build, you are able to max out the Ice Armor. But the issue is that Ice Armor caps at whatever your max life is. So if you have 18,000 max life, you can only get an Ice Armor barrier of 18,000. So all this does is increase where Ice Armor starts. So you can still only go to here, but instead of starting here, you're now starting here. So that's great. It's going to take less time to ramp up to full Ice Armor barrier, but the problem is still there that you can only get this much barrier. All it did was move the starting line a little bit, which that's okay. Shimmering Teleport. This is actually really good. So we can look at Shimmering Teleport. After teleporting, you gain 30% DR for 3 seconds. That's going to go to 4. So a lot of these changes aren't really going to affect this season, but what they are going to do is they're going to affect Season 5 and Season 6. I'd say the biggest takeaway from this patch, these patch notes, is that Sorc got a bit more DR in a lot of different places. And then there were some changes to Potent Warding, which increases your max res. But so we are going to be tankier next season. When they finally deal with Permaflame Shield, when this finally goes, I'm going to actually be able to make like nice tanky builds. So I'm pretty stoked on that. It's good buffs to Sorc's survivability, but they didn't hit our damage enough, I think. All right, let's get back to it. So now you're going to get the 30% DR for 4 seconds, not 3. That's great. Incinerate, damage reduction increase from 15 to 20%. And that is this node right here. I don't exactly know what there it is. Yeah, you gain 15% DR while channeling. So now you're going to get 20%. So Potent Warding. This may find its way into some builds now. Maximum resistance increase from 123% to 246%. Let's look at Potent Warding. After casting a non-basic skill, you gain plus 3% resistance and plus 1% maximum resistance to that skill's element for 9 seconds. So basically, if you have 3 points in Potent Warding, you can now gain, let's see, 1%. If we have 3 points, you can now gain 6% max, like all res. So you'd go from 70 to 76 on, say, Ice Armor. On cold res, when you cast Ice Armor, and then when you cast Teleport, you'll get 76% Lightning DR. So that's actually really nice. And now you can use it on basic skill cast. So Potent Warding may find its way into a lot of builds in the future. Glass Cannon getting reduced. Glass Cannon was already amazing. So basically, I know. I'm sorry. This stuff's really small. Yeah, it's still really small. But Glass Cannon, with 3 ranks, you deal 18% increased damage, but you take 9% more. In other games that I've played, like when I played The Division, it would be you deal 18% more damage, but you take 36% more damage. So it was like a 1-to-2 ratio. It was already a 1-to-half ratio. You were getting more damage than you were taking. But now, where'd it go? Now it's even lower. I don't know what it is. 6%, 18 to 6. So now it's like a 1-to-3 ratio. So that's really nice. Align the elements, persistence, duration increased. Where's align the elements? Okay, so it lasts for 3 seconds now. So align the elements. That's nice. We'll take that once we actually get off Permaflame Shield build. Conduction, movement speed increased. That's when you, I think you critically strike with a shock skill. Conduction right here. So now it lasts a little bit longer, and you get it for longer, but mainly the builds that are taking this, so this is kind of a non-factor. No builds really take conduction. the main builds that would take conduction are shock builds. But the thing about shock builds is they are all building into conjurations as their way to scaling, and you get a ton of movement speed through Conj Mastery with like 6 ranks. You can basically cap your movement speed without ever having to like even Asu evade and stuff like that, as long as you can get like 10 conjurations up. So this is a bit of a non-factor. Electrocution, I actually like this a lot. It went from 15 to 18%. That's a 20% buff, and that's this node right here. Enemies deal, 5%, so now it's 6%. Is it 6%? Yeah. All right. So yeah, 20% buff. So they're going to deal, when you have 3 ranks in here, they're going to deal 18% less damage after being critically struck by a shock skill. So that's actually good on like all builds, because all builds run teleport. So you can just teleport onto an enemy and you get some DR. But it's still conditional DR on the enemy, so it's okay. Warmth. This is actually really cool. Healing per new light, so 6% per second. For a boss enemy, this one got like almost X forward, the healing per boss, and the heal per nearby enemy got like 1.5. So this is a 1.5% now instead of 0.9%. So that's really nice. This is going to be really good for leveling, and certain builds might be able to actually bruise a little bit. Inner Flames, bonus damage while healthy. This is for the fire skills, so that's Inner Flames right here. So it was 9% with 3 ranks. Your pyromancy skills deal, 9% increased damage while you're healthy. That's now it's going to be 12%. So that's pretty nice. Overflowing energy. This is a bit of a meme buff. No builds run overflowing energy. We lack so much damage, and we have other ways to get our cooldowns down, whether it's flicker steps or hectic or ice. The big thing now is Ice Blade enchant, is that overflowing energy, it needs to be removed as a passive. It needs to get moved onto the Paragon, onto probably Ceaseless Conduit, and they need to, my opinion is they need to put in an Omni Power passive for shock skills. And then that would give shock skills a lot more damage, so that would be great. Avalanche, this one's actually pretty cool. So Avalanche doesn't work with Blizzard because it doesn't affect the Ice Spike damage. It's not that good with Frozen Orb, because you have your cast of Frozen Orb, so that would get buffed. But then you have all the Frozen Orb. I don't know if it affects the enchantment, but then you have all the Frozen Orbs coming from the conjurations, and Avalanche won't be buffing that. But when Ver's Mastery finally gets fixed, and we're no longer getting the bonus close damage on our skills, Avalanche probably will be the play, because it will be the most damage that we can get. Because I'm not a fan of Shatter Fishing. I think Shatter is our best passive, honestly, but I don't like running it because you have to run Raiment with it for it to be really good, and then it doesn't work on bosses unless there's mobs, and I don't know. So I think next season probably this, but this season this is good. Because Frozen Orb doesn't proc this a ton because its lucky hit chance is really low. Like if you look at Frozen Orb, it's got a 4% base lucky hit, while Ice Shards has a 16% lucky hit. So if you are running an Ice Shard build, you can look into running Avalanche now instead of Vers. So this is basically an Ice Shard buff right now. Combustion, I have issues with Combustion. So bonus damage per unique source of burning increased from 2% to 4%. So Combustion is a pretty bad passive. It's basically a 1.2x damage aspect. And then an additional 2% per unique source. So I think you cast one Firewall and you'll deal 22%. You cast a second Firewall, you're still doing 22% because it's not a unique source. I think their idea with burning builds and fire builds in general is they want you to be mix and matching. Like, I think the whole idea with Starfall becoming a cooldown skill for Meteor was that they want you to run hybrids. Like, you cast a Firewall, and then, you cast a Shattered Stars Meteor. You have Burning from the Meteor. You have Burning from Shattered Stars. You have Firewalls. But it's like, we can't get that many different unique sources of burning. Like, a Firewall, a Meteor, and then we have Flame Shield. And I guess it is a little bit of damage, but the issue is it can't stack up that high enough. And the way Sorc is right now is we don't have the damage. When you make a build, you sort of need to put all your eggs in one basket, we can't be doing all these like crazy hybrids like Firewall Meteor, because then you have to increase both your direct damage. You know, Meteor needs crit strike chance, crit strike damage, 3 curses, the aspect of 3 curses. It wants Asu's ferocity, but then Firewall wants combustion. It doesn't want any crit chance. Like even if you're running X Files, it's really not even that worth it to take crit chance. You're better off taking like gloves that have say int, attack speed, and damage over time. It creates this issue where we can't start putting our eggs in all these different baskets, because then our overall, instead of our firewall damage being this high, our firewall damage is now here, and instead of on a pure meteor, our meteor damage being here, it's now here. And you can only cast one skill at a time. You know what I mean? So it's like I either cast firewall and deal this much damage, or I cast firewall, deal 50% of the damage I could have. Cast meteor, deal 50% of the damage that I could have. So it's like you limit yourself when you have to make these hybrid builds to try and make combustion work, and you don't get the full damage you could have gotten if you just went all in on like a normal Sorc build, like 4 or 5 cooldown skills and one skill just spam casting, because that's how Sorc is right now. And unless like that was an attempt to make the hybrid builds a little bit stronger, but 4% isn't really enough in my opinion. It's something though for burning builds. Just for like regular firewall and stuff. All right, I went off on a tangent there. Asu's ferocity, crit strike chance to increase from 5 to 10%. That's whatever. That's okay. I mean, you get both bonuses when you kill an enemy. This is good for fireball. Fireball and meteor are the only builds that run Asu's ferocity as of now, unless you're like just trying to get attack speed out of it, like on like a frozen orb build or something. But then this change doesn't really affect you, so like it's okay. It's a little bit of crit chance. All right, so Shatter got buffed, so that's great for Makuna and the Firebolt cheese builds. So yeah, that's cool. I mean, all right. So with all these changes, it makes me think that they are not planning to delete code. It makes me think they're not planning to rework our passives, that they are just sticking with whatever they have, and they're just going to keep buffing them until they're like good. But it's nice to see that they touch the passives. And then Ver's Mastery got a buff. The bonus damage increased from 15 to 20%. Bonus damage after a critical strike increased from 20 to 25%. So now the base is, instead of 15 and 20 as the base, it's now 20 and 25. So that's great. So that's a nice little buff. All right. All right. Now let's get on to the aspects. So aspect of concentration, that is the aspect. I think it's just on my normal standard one. Aspect of concentration, casting a conjuration skill grants you 20% DR for 5 seconds. So in the PTR it was 25%, and then they nerfed it for no reason. And now they walked it back, so now you get 25% DR. So that's great. I actually joked about this on stream, that they were going to buff Unbroken Tether. I said they were going to buff the percentage, but now it's going to change 5 times. Okay. Really not pushing the needle on Chain Lightning by any means. It needed, it needed base damage buffs, which I don't think it can do because it's still strong leveling. We need sweeping reworks to the Paragon. Aspect of Overwhelming Currents. Stop with, no one's gonna run this. This is the one where during unstable currents you have now you have a 40% chance to cast 2 shock skills instead of just 1. Bro, in what world am I, even in a perma UC build where you're spamming ball lightning, there's only like a 1 in 4 chance you're gonna make a spear. That would be the only thing that really has a ton of value out of this. There's just no world where I'm giving up an aspect for this. I'm not giving up a 30 or 25% damage aspect to run this. This aspect should just be removed and just move it onto overflowing energy. And just give it a 50, unstable currents now is a 50% chance to cast 2 shock skills, like something like that. All right. Let's see. First Mastery grants 69% damage for each close enemy, up to 18 to 20%. So Ver's now gives 9% DR straight up. And then 27. Oh my god. So this is a huge buff. Ver's Mastery just got a massive buff. So that's why I think like overflowing energy is even more hilarious because Ver's is just so much stronger than overflowing. And now you can have Mage Lord, so like whenever you're close to somebody, you have 27% DR. And if you're a hardcore player, you can put this on your amulet for 43.5% all DR. Yeah, concentration and Mage Lord are just crazy. And we might, even if I don't know, if we might still end up running Verz on everything, even if they fix it. So Shattered Stars, that's the meteorites. You know, after you cast meteorites spawn around it. That got buffed from 35 to 45%. That's all right. Frozen Memories, additional cast increase from 1 to 2. I still don't really see a world where this build mana is not really an issue. You know, you can just run Starless, and now you have or you can just run like a greater mana per second on your chest, and like you can get a lot of mana back. I just don't really see a world where Frozen Memories is even ever ran on any build that even uses Avalanche. I mean, maybe pre-Starless Skies you run Avalanche on Ice Shards with this, but that's such an off-meta like B tier build. It's like, all right, man. Battlecasters. Battlecasters is that stupid aspect where lucky hit, when your conjuration skills lucky hit, you have up to a 40% chance to gain 1 rank. This can stack up to 3 times and it lasts 12 seconds. I don't know. So, I mean, I guess I'd have to do math on whether that's worth it, because now you can get 5 ranks to a skill. And it's like, what's the point of this? Why don't you just change it to all your conjuration skills gain 5 ranks? Done deal. And it might still not even be worth it. You'd have to do the math on like what your old skill percentage was to what the new one. And like Hydra builds are so niche. Like the Hydra build that I have isn't even a Hydra build. It's a Tyrell's build because I found the Hydra damage kind of like middling. All right. Fucking they buff Flame Scar again, bro. We're not using this. We have Flamethrower on a staff. Like this is just I don't know. I don't know what they're doing with Flame Scar. All right, they keep buffing the Ember's damage as if it like does anything. All right, they buffed Asadora's overflowing cameo. It got a 20% buff. I still don't think it's good. You give up a 1.5x damage aspect, so you give up like potentially like a 45% damage buff on shredding blades on your amulet for this, and it doesn't have a high enough chance. It doesn't go off enough, and it doesn't do enough damage to warrant your entire build doing 45% less damage. And then let's not even start to talk about the things that you can roll on your amulet. You know, cooldown, crit chance. Like I don't even know what even is on Asadora's. Hopefully, hopefully we actually have this updated. Cooldown reduction, crackling energy damage, shocking impact, doesn't work on bosses. Movement speed. There's a 15% chance to make a lightning nova, and now it's gonna, even if you got like some 3 or 4 or 5 million damage lightning novas, it's just like you lose so much main skill damage that it's just totally offset by it. And I think it's cool in some like mid-tier builds that are farming really low level content. Once you start to talk about anything like super hard or end game, it's just, bro, if this was a pair of gloves, we would start talking, not gloves, but this was a ring or this was a focus. But the fact that it's an amulet, like, bro, it's just not enough damage to make it be worth it. Even if you have like 2200 intelligence, it's just not doing enough damage. And I don't know if the 20% buff is going to do it. Staff of Endless Rage got buffed from 60 to 70%. I think it's bro, people we're just not using staff. Unique staffs are so bad. And Fireball didn't even want Staff of Endless Rage to begin with. Every third cast of Fireball launches 2 additional projectiles and deals now 70% increased damage. You lose your focus, you have no damage aspect. Why would I not just take a wand focus or even just a regular staff with chance for Fireball to cast twice with Illuminators? You get, Inner Flames, Core Skill damage to close, which, why is damage to close on Fireball, which, is typically played sort of at mid-range? I don't know. I don't really have any words for this. This, why was it? I don't know. Hopefully next season they give it like the whole thing of Staff of Endless Rage, though, is that it's got a chance to cast. It doesn't need a chance to cast twice because every third projectile it casts twice. So it's essentially it's essentially over time. It's this whole entire staff is worth a single temper and a lower damage aspect because basically you get it's a 33% chance because it's every third cast. It's basically a 33% chance for Fireball to cast twice temper. That's what this whole staff is. And then they deal like 70% increased damage. So then it equates to like, I don't know, maybe like a 1.3x damage aspect. And it's like I can just get those out of these and have 2 damage aspects and get intelligence and a fire damage or a fire critical strike damage temper or vulnerable temper. I can get 2 fireball chance to cast twice temper so that I can get like a 60% chance for fireball to cast twice. I can get cooldown. I can get crit chance. This is just, I don't know. I hate this staff. And then Gloves of the Illuminator. Damage penalty reduced from 25 to 20%. All right. That's okay. I still think Illuminators should make it so Fireball deals more damage. And like one thing that they missed that I think is huge is like when I was running Charged Bolts, I wasn't even running Piercing Static. You deal Charge Bolts pierce, but they deal 40% less damage after the target's hit after first. Why? Why do they deal less damage? They should deal more damage. It should just be Charge Bolts pierce and deal 25% more damage. In the same way that Gravitational is Ball Lightning orbits and deals 25% increased damage. I don't understand why these two aspects that both buff a functionality. The same thing with Piercing Cold. Like, why is Ball Lightning Gravitate deal 25% more damage, but Piercing Cold is Pierce deals, I mean, it's 10% less damage per subsequent enemy hit, so I guess that starts to stack up and you start to do like way less damage. But this should just be Ice Shards Pierce 3 to 9 times and just call it a day at that. And then Charge Bolts Pierce, and they should also just deal 25% damage, more damage all the time. That would really help the skill. And then health and damage levels have been reduced in the pit. The adjustment is most significant as players approach tier 60. So we'll see how much they actually reduced, like 110, 120, and that sort of range. And tormented bosses held their health reduced by 30%. Oh, that's interesting. So Holy Bolts got nuked. It's now a percent of weapon damage. And that's about it. So yeah, sorry, I had a rant there for a minute, but I like what they did with the survivability stuff. I don't think they did enough with the damage, and I really hope we get some sweeping reworks to our Paragon. Because this node right here is the most laughable thing I've ever seen. Ceaseless Conduit. Crackling Energy has 25% net chance to consume a charge. That's useless because you make on a crackling build, you make on like Chain Lightning or Ball Lightning, you make so much crackling that it's like irrelevant whether the charge is consumed or not. And its damage is so minimal. And then you have to like you can't just run Crackling Energy as damage. You lose so much main skill and the Crackling Energy doesn't do enough damage. And then what it becomes is you have to like on all these damage to close tempers and stuff, you have to start taking Crackling Energy damage tempers because they have a high value. But you're better off just taking straight lightning damage tempers because it increases both your main skill and the Crackling Energy damage. So it's like if you, I don't know what they're trying to do with that build, dude. They want it to be like a little bit of supplemental extra damage, but it's like, dude, we don't. The game isn't Nightmare Hundreds anymore. I don't know. I digress. So I don't think they did enough. I really hope I'm probably still done until season 5. I may try a couple pits, maybe try and push a little bit further, but it's so boring. But I'm looking forward to them fixing permanent flame shield, and then me being able to go back to make real builds. And we did get a lot of DR buffs, so I think that's going to be nice for next season. But that's it for me, folks. This isn't the best. I don't know. I think the most glaring thing for me is the flay buff. I feel like they're so out of touch. They buffed flay, Meanwhile, Flay is hitting for 2 billion for its bleed. I don't even know. Is 2 billion the hit and 75 billion is the bleed? I don't think this was a Holy Bolt proc. I think he's just got regular stuff on. I don't, 79 billion. Meanwhile, I'm like struggling to get, I'm maybe hitting for like 5 million on Frozen Orb. 2 to 5 million on Frozen Orb. I don't know. I I don't really know what they're doing. Like Flame Scar, Ember's damage increased by 35%, bro. I'm not running Flame Scar. All right, that's it. I'm done being sour. Yeah, yeah. I'll probably see you guys in August. Peace.